Thank you to whoever that voiceover person was. Appreciate it, and great to see so many people in here today. As mentioned in that very brief introduction, I do suffer from being an economist. Apologies. That means for my day job, I would normally be talking to you about how Australia has been in a recession for the last 18 months. Per capita recession, of course, but that's the only thing that matters. And I'd be talking about how this stagnation is being caused by a lack of productivity reform and how Australia desperately needs another round of tax cuts, serious tax cuts. And I believe all that, and if you catch me outside, I will chew your ear off saying all of this to you. But for better or worse, I'm not going to be talking about normal economics for this talk today. Instead, I want to address a common thing, a common accusation that is thrown at us pointy-headed, nerdy, free market economist types, which is me. Yes, I'm all of those things. The accusation is, oh, it's well and good you're talking about the economy, but, you know, we want to live in a society, not an economy. Life is about more than just economics. Have you heard this? And my answer to that is, yes, you are right, we are wrong. Although I would say not so much we are wrong, because I don't think economists ever didn't know that, but to the degree that it ever looks like we didn't know that, or that we're speaking in a way that makes us look like we're focused solely on the traded economy, then we were wrong. Apologies. So I want to have a look at this a little bit, looking at the society part of the story from an economics perspective, because that's what I am. But fundamentally, this idea society is what matters. We all know that, right? The fact that you're in here means you're probably a bit like me, which means you spend a lot of time arguing about politics and arguing perhaps about this trade-off between markets, free markets, competitive markets, and a planned economy run by a bunch of benevolent bureaucrats and politicians who love us dearly. You're probably quite used to this debate, and therefore, because we're having that debate, we're talking about those two issues a lot, the business sector and the political sector, both very important sectors. I'd say arguably, but I think you'll all agree, I think everyone agrees that neither of those are what life is about. The so-called third sector is about what life's about, a non-profit and non-politics. And what does that mean? That's your family, your friends, your church, your community. I mean, these are the things I put to you that is actually what gives you connection, what gives you meaning, the reason you wake up in the morning. Sure, we play politics. It's fun and we want to improve the country. Sure, we're interested in business because you've got to make money, and you know, that's also the alternative to too much politics. But the real part of life comes from civil society, that third sector. So yes, this accusation that if it's true that economists only care about the market side of things, we've made a mistake. So the civil society, what matters, and I think it's fair to say, I don't think I'll have to convince too many of you, that in recent history in the West, civil society is in decline. Family, church, and community is in decline. In the last 50 years, the rate of marriage in Australia has gone down about half. It's halved. The core rate, right, the number of marriages per 1,000 people has gone down from 8 to 4 per year. So marriage is in decline. Church attendance is in decline. The number of people who nominally say that they're part of a church, that's going down. But church attendance, which I think is the more important part when we're talking about community, building community, you have to look them in the face occasionally. That's going down. We all know that. Community interaction, volunteering, Rotary clubs, all of those sort of little, what Edmund Burke famously called the little platoons of society. Volunteering and organization, sorry, number of people in those organizations is going down. So it's all declining. And what does this mean? Well, we're seeing the consequences all around. We've probably spent quite a lot of this weekend talking about some of the consequences. Less connection with family, church, and community, very obviously. Less connection with people, loneliness, social isolation. Right, and we're seeing that. Depression, suicide. That shouldn't be a surprising consequence of this. A second consequence, lack of meaning. We don't get our meaning from politics. You might have a great job, but most people don't get their meaning from their job. Most people get their meaning from some mix of, I'll say it again, the trifecta, family, church, and community. And when they're in decline, there's going to be a decline in a sense of meaning for many people. And I don't think that should be a surprise either, although the consequence of that, let me know if you've seen either of these consequences in the real world lately. The consequence of that would be either just a drift to narcissistic hedonism, degeneracy, as the kids call it these days, Have we seen any of that in recent Western history? Or a search for meaning elsewhere. You don't get meaning from your community, you get meaning from your ideology. The rise of the woke mind virus. We've seen that anywhere. Both of these should be unsurprising consequences. You decay community, you decay civil society, you're going to get this hedonistic degeneracy and the rise of the woke mind virus. And another thing we've got from the decline of community, and this one is less noticed, it's less observed, it's less obvious perhaps, is a decline in the governance role that community has. That's a bit weird. Let me explain what I mean. Family, church, community does help to guide your behavior. Right? There are social feedbacks. They don't send you to jail. Your family doesn't send you to jail. But there is social feedbacks, and that guides your behavior. Hopefully it builds you to become a better person over time. It's like social guardrails on life given to you through that trifecta, family, church, and community. And when that is weakened, that governance structure is weakened, the control on your behavior is weakened. And what does that lead to? The rise of the nanny state and increasing control by our bureaucratic masters, because they are better than us. And have we seen that as well? So I'll just answer my own question and say yes. So this is all what we would expect to see from this decline in civil society. We are richer than we've ever been, but we're falling apart, which gives us a great opportunity to do a bit of investigative digging. And I see I've only got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to struggle to get to the bottom of this question. But this is a bit of a whodunit then. I think hopefully you agree, family, church, and community are in decline, and this is a dangerous thing. All of these consequences from that could be spelling the decline and decay of Western civilization. Not to put too fine a point on it. So who done it? Right, the Marxists have an answer. It was us evil capitalists. Us evil economists preaching the virtues of the free market. And look, that's a common answer. Communitarians give that answer all the time. And it's worth unpacking. It's worth looking into. It could be true. Just so happens that when we look into it, it's not true. Now, I'm running low on time, so I can't give all these examples, but there are some great examples. But I'll just start with the most capitalist country on earth, USA. Country on earth, it still has the strongest churches and the strongest sense of civil society. USA, not a coincidence. Within the USA, which people give the most to charity, do the most volunteering, have most engagement with civil society? It's the conservatives who don't believe in the sort of left-wing values of the state-run everything. They've actually unpacked that. That's true. Next time some lefty says they're a nicer person than you, they're just nicer at giving away other people's money, not their own. Right? The actual evidence shows that it's people who don't believe in giving away other people's money that give away more of their own money. Right? A great book. It's Who Really Cares by Arthur Brooks in America, if you want to look that up. And I can't help but give this one other example. You guys may have heard recently, this recent news, Germany got back together, East and West. I'm 34 years out of date. But after that happened, it gave us a great opportunity to do experiments. Because as economists, we would love to be able to just put different people in different buckets and run different policy experiments on them. It's quite unethical. They don't let us do it. But occasionally a country does that to themselves. So Germany did us a favor. They split themselves apart, ran very different experiments on how to run those countries. And we were able to study that. So they got a bunch of people together from East and West Germany and run a bunch of games. This is game theory. It's a very fun-sounding part of economics. It's a lot of maths, though, I warn you. But they ran these games, these experimental games, and seeing how people behaved in different scenarios. And it was testing how community-spirited you were, how generous you were, how honest you were, the degree to which you would pitch in on a public good. And as you might be able to guess by the fact that I'm telling you this story, it was the West Germans, it was those evil capitalists that were more generous, that were more willing to pitch in for the good of the group. And those people who had been brought up in a socialist environment were less so. And the longer you had been in East Germany, the more selfish you were. So I think all of that goes to push back against this thesis that the decay of civil society is because of us in this room. It's not us. So who did it? I'm down to 1 minute, so I'm really going to struggle to get to the end here. But there is a correlation you can note that basically directly matches the decline of civil society. And it's a little bit awkward because it's a thing that, for the politicians in the room, you can never run against. You wouldn't win an election. But it's the welfare state. And I don't just mean unemployment insurance. It's easy for, I don't like unemployment insurance. The whole apparatus. Unemployment insurance is like 15 billion. The whole thing is like 350 billion. So the whole apparatus of the welfare state. And when that was started to be introduced about 100 years ago. I don't know if you guys have heard the story about friendly societies. All right, it's a fascinating history. It's welfare before the welfare state, community actually getting together like the way that I hope you agree with me it should, to help solve problems. And they were going very well. They were growing. They were representing more than 50% of British society. I use the British numbers. They have the best data. And it was covering more than 50% of British society and providing welfare without the welfare state. Pensions, medical cover, sick pay, through people coming together and coordinating in their neighborhoods, in their communities. Right? It can be done. And it doesn't exist today. About a year or two after the government stepped in and very generously started giving us the same benefits, nearly all friendly societies fell apart. They still exist on paper in a few places, but instead of representing 55% of society, they now represent about 55 people. So it's a very different thing. That is a direct example. I can look at that. Well, why did that die off? Well, obviously. There's another part, and I know I'm over time, the clock's flashing. I'll say this one as quick as I can, because I guess this is the full stop, what I wanted to get to. And this will make me sound the worst, and I can't leave without making myself sound terrible. Like there's a very unromantic part of family, church, and community. Of course, you go to your family, you join a family because you're in love, you go to church because you have faith, you join your community because you're civic-minded. That's what we all tell ourselves, that's normal, and it's all true. But it's not all there is. Those three institutions have historically played a hugely important economic role. They have been our welfare state. They have provided insurance. They have provided a group of people you can fall back on and have a high trust network to solve problems as they came up. And that is hugely economically important. No one here wants to admit, oh yes, I got married because I realized the economic potential. I'm not saying that's why you got married, but look through history. Why is it that these institutions, they succeed and thrive in every culture, in every point in history? There's something going on. They were doing something right. And one part of what they were doing right is they were actually giving us very real economic benefits. And then increasingly over the last 100 years, the government has stepped in and very generously offered some of those benefits directly from a bureaucrat stamping a check. And pretty much at that dot, go around the Western countries, at that dot, you started to see a decline in marriages, a decline in church attendance, a decline in active participation in civil society. I don't think that's a coincidence. All right, so I think we have our answer to the whodunit. It's a very unromantic answer. Please forgive me for that. I did warn you I'm an economist. But I think we have the answer. It's not the market. It is the welfare state, which gives us a stark choice. You don't have the option of both, right? I mean, that's the easy answer. That's what people immediately want to go to. Why can't we just have a big government, and the big government gives us a healthy society? History shows us quite clearly you're picking one or the other. And I would implore you that the better answer is that trifecta again: family, church, and community. So if you're a believer in family, church, and community, as I am, but if you are, then I implore you, the only way to get that is through small government. Flipping that around, just for any people in the room who aren't very big into family, church, and community, if you are a believer in small government, the only way you get that is by boosting and supporting family, church, and community. One or the other is going to dominate. And we all need to make that choice. And I think I know what your choice will be, but I hope it is family, that trifecta: family, church, and community. Thank you for listening. Apologies, Coops, but thank you.